Hello and welcome back. I'm Aliyah Futch. Our spotlight interview guest today is Dr. Misti Harper. Dr. Harper has many titles here at UNCP. She's Assistant Professor for African American History, Director of African American Studies, and a member of the North Carolina Association of Historians, among other things. Dr. Harper, how are you today?
I am very well, Aliyah, and thank you so much for having me.
I'm so excited to have you. Dr. Harper, for viewers who are unfamiliar with you, can you tell us about your role here at UNCP, as well as how long you've been teaching?
Yes, so I was fortunate enough to be hired at UNCP in the spring of 2021. This is my 5th year. I am up for tenure and promotion this year, so fingers crossed that they will keep me for forever. I am the professor of African American history. I teach a bevy of classes, including Intro to African American History, which you took with me, the Civil Rights Movement, a history of Sub-Saharan Africa, Introduction to African American Studies, among other things. I've been very graciously approached by a number of student organizations to serve as advisor, Braves for Dems, the Black Student Union, most recently the Melanin Movement, which I was honored to even be considered as an advisor for this new and upcoming group. I've been teaching a lot longer than my career at UNCP suggests. I started teaching for the Army National Guard in 2005. That was actually my very first teaching position, was teaching social studies to folks who were trying to get their GED so that they could serve our country. And it was really that experience that showed me that I liked working with older students. And so I went back to get my master's in history in 2009 and graduated in 2017 with my PhD in African American history. And I've been teaching university since about 2013, whenever I was a graduate student. So I've been doing this for a minute.
A good minute.
Yeah.
And we love your passion. I just wanted to ask, is there a part or a moment in your studies or your career that you knew this was specifically what you wanted to do?
That is such a good question. And yes, so whenever I decided I would get my master's degree in history, I actually have a minor in history. I did not go to the University of the Ozarks. That was where I earned my bachelor's degree, but it was initially in theater. And so as much as I loved performing, my family was all in Arkansas and Louisiana, and I was just not the sort of person who was going to go to New York or to Los Angeles. Perhaps I should have tried it, but I didn't. I stayed at home. And so I was really sort of struggling to figure out what to do. That was actually what led me to the Army National Guard whenever they had piloted a program called the GED Plus program that I started teaching for. And of course, that was what revealed to me, oh, teaching, right? I really had never considered that at all as a career possibility. And whenever I decided I would get my master's degree in history, because I enjoyed teaching social studies so much, I'd initially envisioned that I would just teach online classes for a local college or university. That was whenever online education was really starting to take off. And I was already married. I thought, this will be fantastic. My husband and I can start a family. That'll be lovely. And then what happened was I got into my very first seminar class at the University of Central Arkansas. And from the second that I sat down in that class and began to listen to this professor, who was a professor of women's history, I was like, oh, no. I've got to do this for real. And so I was like, I'm not going to teach online. I'm going to go and get my PhD. This is the thing that I'm meant to do. This is what lights me up. It was very much an aha moment of the most unexpected kind. So
that's beautiful. If I remember when I had your class, you asked us if we felt comfortable with you as a teacher in an unexpected way, more so like, you're probably wonder what I'm doing here. So how do you feel as a woman in this profession and in this study, but not a woman of color? Like, how does that work for you?
I still ask my students that question. I still have students who come into class, and I hope that it's always this way. Students who take any form of African American history or African American cultural studies ought to have questions whenever they see a big-headed, blonde-haired white woman sitting at the helm. That they ought to immediately ask questions. And the way that I approach their understandable trepidation is to insist that I'm not trying to teach a lived experience. I am a scholar, a trained scholar. I have studied African American culture and history from the perspective of an outsider. That's all that I can offer. What I can teach my students to do is to think critically, to think considerately, hopefully to broaden their perspectives and their minds by providing a plethora of voices that come from the community and that are deeply rooted in not just scholarship, but in real, actual lived experiences, and teach them to think about these people and these historical elements along with how they are married to our present in that academic way. That is what I can offer. I think that there is a value in being an outsider in areas of study where you are not a member of the community, because it perhaps allows outsiders to take stock of experiences and events from a less intimate perspective. I know certainly anytime I'm teaching anything about women's history, for example, and for myself, it doesn't matter if the women are people who I share ethnic community with, or class community with, or racial community with. It's the fact that we have this shared experience of womanhood that I can feel very intimately attached to, and it can be difficult in those moments sometimes to separate my own lived experiences out from, relaying whatever it is we're studying that day. Obviously, I am not a member of the African American community, and I think sometimes that's a benefit to me because I can step back and take a less intimate, more, for lack of a better way to put it, more academic approach. There was a really incredible Middle Eastern scholar called Edward Said who talked about the advantages that members, or rather outsiders to communities, have in that way. And he talked about his own experiences as a Middle Easterner looking at European history, that he could see things that perhaps, European or Eurocentric people could not. I think that I have that. I am also always aware of what my limitations are as a white woman, and I try really hard to relate that to my students so that they don't feel that I'm co-opting or that trying to think of an elegant way to put it. And the best thing that I'm coming up with, honestly, is an old episode of the TV show Atlanta where there was this terrible caricature of this classic white guy with a capital W who was an African studies professor, and he was everything you imagine he would be as a caricature. I try really, really hard to never be that for my students. I wish I had a better way to put that, but it's just, I try hard to keep that self-awareness all the time so that my students feel safe and that they can also learn and they want to engage. And I was so grateful that you were a part of a class that was so wonderfully brilliant in that way and willing to. Time, too.
Really tough time. So, have you ever faced any challenges with that fact, or how have you handled any challenges that arise from that?
I have honestly been very fortunate to have earned the trust of most students, I think. Excuse me. I know that there have certainly been students whenever I was at Arkansas, whenever I was teaching in Minnesota, and there have been some here who I know never fully invested in me as a professor, and that is okay. I don't ask that of my students, to invest in me fully. And again, I do understand, what the hesitation to do so would be whenever you see me. I'm not a member of the community. That said, I think that I have earned most students' respect over the course of my career. And honestly, the most challenging situation that I've ever had with a student didn't come from a Black student, it didn't come from a student of color, it came from a white student, actually, who had joined my class, I am convinced, to simply disrupt. Like, they didn't like the ethos of the class existing, and they enrolled simply to disrupt the class. That's only happened once, thank goodness, but that's the most challenging example that I can think of that I've ever had as a professor.
That was one of my concerns, probably entering the class, was that we could run into that. Mm-hmm. But as we spoke and that I've taken your course, if I remember correctly, you authored your own textbook that we were assigned. And I just want to know, how did you go about that? What was the research process like?
Thank you very much for asking about the textbook. I always feel a little weird assigning it, and honestly, I assign it because the publisher, that was a condition of the publisher whenever I signed on to write this textbook. I was grateful for the opportunity, but I've always felt a little bit like, oh, you're a little high on your own supply, assigning your own book, right?
It was a really good textbook. It taught me a lot.
I appreciate it very much. Honestly, it gave me an incredible insight into why most textbooks have multiple authors. It was so overwhelming sometimes writing that. The reason that I thought that I could do it was because by that point, when I was invited by Kendall Hunt to write it, I had already amassed like 20 years of note-taking and scholarship, and of course I had done a plethora of my own research by that point, and it was still crazy overwhelming because, as scholars, we are specialized in a field. Mm-hmm. I'm a civil rights historian. That's mm-hmm. what I do. And now I'm trying to write this sweeping narrative overview of African American history from like the 1500s. And it's just like, oh my Lord, I'm drowning. I see now why there's usually at least like 10 people on a textbook. Mm-hmm. But I really did enjoy it because I got to go back and revisit different parts of my own education. I'm a hoarder. Most historians I have met are hoarders. We never throw anything away. I had notebooks stretching back to my undergraduate history classes that I got to consult. I was like, oh my gosh, look at 19-year-old me go. And it was actually useful to write this text. So I'm really proud of it. It was hard to create it, but I'm really proud of it.
It's amazing. And I hear you have another book coming out.
My first baby, yes.
Tell us about it.
And I'm being totally serious. This book that is about to come out, she's older than my daughter. Wow. She was my master's thesis, yes. The University of Georgia is going to release my very first monograph in July of this year. It is called Ladies of Little Rock, Black Femininity and Respectability Politics in the Fight to Desegregate Central High School. And it's all centered on Little Rock Central High School, the girls of the Little Rock Nine, and the Black activist women who supported them in the community in their endeavor to integrate that high school. I have been working on this project since 2009. Wow. And so to see her come to fruition, if she was a real person, she would have a driver's license now. I'm incredibly proud of her. I'm really excited about it.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And you also have a personal project?
I do. As soon as I see a physical copy of Ladies of Little Rock, I'm going to set her to the side and I'm going to pour myself into my second book project, it is about a fellow called George Applewhite. And he was one of the few black members of the Lowry gang who operated right here, literally in Pembroke, defending the Lumbee community, newly freed people, a handful of poor white folks from the chaos of post-Civil War North Carolina and from the ascendancy of the Ku Klux Klan in this region. For a moment in time, we had this incredible collaboration between black, native, and white folks, and George Applewhite was at the helm of that. He was an in-law and a best friend of Henry Berry Lowry, who was the head of this gang of gunslingers who really were incredibly prolific. They became nationally famous or infamous, depending on your point of view. And George Applewhite was also the only known survivor of this group who tried so hard to fight for the protection of this community. I'm going to argue that George Applewhite possibly had a vision towards civil rights, even though that's going to be a little bit harder to prove. I think whenever you're a formerly enslaved person, you probably definitely have some idea about civil rights in your head. So I'm going to see if I can make hay of that argument, but I can't wait to dive deep into his story. So.
Well, it sounds like a beautiful project. I will definitely be checking into it.
Thank you.
Well, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for being with us, Dr. Harper. Let's send it back to the desk for more news and sports that are important to the Pembroke community.
Thank you so much.